Hi there, this is Caitlin Wilson for Information 101. This is my PowerPoint presentation on the role of the library technician. So just a point of clarification, I was given a contact from the professor, Megan Goodall, and she was listed as a library services coordinator, though through my interview with her, I actually discovered that she has stepped down from this role, and she's currently a library assistant. So my job posting relating to this assignment will be for a library assistant instead of library services coordinator. So this is the advertisement that I found online. It's an advertisement with Edmonton Public Libraries for a library assistant position. It's a full-time position that was posted recently this month in November, and it needs to be filled at various library locations across Edmonton. I chose this position because it seemed to be a realistic choice for me to apply for once I've completed this program as a resident of Alberta. And I've enjoyed my time spent at the Edmonton Public Library near Southgate Mall, so if I'm able, I would love to work for Edmonton Public. And of course, I would enjoy the employment of any of these locations. So the three main professional competencies. So I looked at the advertisement and I copied out the professional qualifications that they have listed. So I understand that the advertisement calls upon certain things that when I look a little bit deeper, I can pull away the three most important skill sets that I believe the advertisement is asking for. Firstly, of course, is to have the diploma that is tangible proof that you are qualified to fulfill the role you're applying for. Secondly, is to have applicable workplace environment skills that you have gained from at least 1 year of experience in a library setting. And thirdly, to have an intermediate level of comfort and understanding of technology and digital information literacy so that you can succeed in using online programming. And when I look at the advertisement, I pulled out what I thought was the personal competencies, so I copied out what you would bring to the position from the advertisement online. And so again, pulling away from that, the three personal skills that I took from the advertisement were firstly, recognizing and consciously removing any bias a person might have towards race, gender, religion, or sexuality when entering the space to enable any and all patrons to feel that a library is a safe space. And of course, truly to be inclusive and respectful in all aspects of life, which seems more than reasonable to me. And secondly, is to have exceptional interpersonal skills with patrons in understanding that the library staff must work together to have the library run as smoothly as possible. There would undoubtedly be times when you may be interacting with an individual that has high emotions for one reason or another, especially considering the pandemic we're in. It's very realistic. So you must be understanding and patient, kind and respectful when dealing with an employee, management, or patron that could be feeling these high emotions. And thirdly, the ability to adapt and research answers when you can't solve a query individually. There will be times when technology might crash or fail you, and in that case, you must think of what your next move would be to complete the task at hand, effectively and efficiently. So after examining these skills, along with the job description, what I find I have confidence in when applying to this position would be my adaptability skills in regards to technology and working around technology crashes, issues, or failures. And this is mostly due to being an optical technician. Right now I'm working at Superstore Optical. We use a program called MVE, which is short for My Vision Express. It's a program that is notorious for freezing, crashing, or not simply running whatsoever. It's around 25 years old, so it struggles to properly run the base programming we need sometimes, and I find that I can work around these moments when it fails by notating important client information by hand. And I feel excited about providing proper customer service because I feel that all I've done really in my line of work up to this point is customer service, so I think I have a good handle on it. I have done cashiering, I have worked in the bulk foods department at Superstore, and then working in PC Express, which is the online personal shopping aspect of Superstore, and now I'm at Superstore Optical. And these departments all have unique requirements. They are all within the lines of customer service. So when you're doing customer service, you really have to consider what can you do best to ensure the patron has a pleasant experience and is willing to return to the establishment, as well as how are you going to make sure that they inform their friends and family about the location and the services it provides. Every professional interaction you have with a potential patron or client or customer is a time that you're selling the brand that you are hired by. So I think that I could really apply that in a library environment. And the skills that I could improve upon when applying for this position, I think would definitely be the process of facilitating educational classes. If I were to obtain this position, this is an area of expertise I could definitely strengthen. I don't really have experience teaching aside from the format of one-on-one education, and to lead a group of individuals would present an interesting challenge in how to keep everyone engaged and ensure that they're all able to comprehend whatever the subject matter might be. I wonder how you'd balance your time with struggling to learn something, like with multiple people as opposed to one, to ensure that everyone gets the supports that they need in order to succeed. And as well, I believe that working in a team would be something that I could strengthen. And it's not that I'm an uncooperative person by any means, but currently in my optical department, it's usually me and my manager, or me and one other coworker. Oftentimes we are just limited to 2 employees in the workspace. Every once in a while we might have 3, but I'm not really exposed to a team environment currently. So unfortunately, I can't put a face to the name with Megan because she was more comfortable with a phone conversation. However, she was lovely in educating me about the real-world experience that she has in being a library assistant with EPL. So she is a library assistant currently at the Stanley A. Milner branch in Edmonton Public Library, and she has stepped back from the role of services coordinator because it seemed that that role was too much of a workload to balance with all of her other life expectations and responsibilities. So in my interview, these are the answers that she gave to my questions. So when I asked her, why did you choose public libraries over academic or special or law, Megan responded that public libraries seem to have a little bit more stability in terms of financial and in job security. And she went on to state that there is a greater variety of things to do in a public library. You wouldn't just do programming necessarily. She's been able to have the opportunity to take on library services coordinator and has experience in working for the interlibrary loan department. So she really appreciated that there's a wider breadth of things that you could do. And she said that she was able to stand out during the interview process, not necessarily just from the skills that she's gained in these different roles, but by having experience in working as a summer programmer with Strathcona County after completing her first year of studies. And by that point, she had already had a fair amount of customer service under her belt and had completed an early childhood development certification prior to entering the program, which later on aided her in developing children's programming at the library. So when I asked her about how the interview process went, she described that it was conducted by the manager of the branch she was dealing with, and the same was true with the library services coordinator position. Most of the questions are scenario-based, examining your abilities to work on a team, difficult customer scenarios, scenarios of time management, and of course the basics of why do you want to work here, what do you know about the community. She also clarified it wasn't necessarily only volunteer experience that would aid one in inquiring employment, because I asked her, would you have better chances if you had more volunteer skills under your belt? And she said in her case that wasn't necessarily true because she did her practicum at Londonderry branch, and from that point she applied and successfully acquired the summer programmer position. She was only in her second year, and she gave credit to her prior positions of employment in enabling her to have success when applying for the library assistant role. When I asked her what was most invigorating about the position of library assistant, she stated that it was servicing your community. And she said it's more than just aiding readers in picking out digital sourcing, books, and materials. Granted, that is a given in this line of work, but she found true satisfaction in connecting people to community resources, connecting them with relevant agencies, aiding in connecting a person with government agencies or language learning services. She says that libraries are much more community-based than when she had initially started, and she gave the example of EPL enabling patrons to connect with social workers, which I didn't really know until we had the presentation on the Stanley A. Milner Library, and they had spoken of the social workers. She did state, unfortunately, there are only 2 of them, so they are incredibly busy, and they can't really be reached a lot of the time, so you can't depend on them solely. She's able to feel good when she can reference patrons to other supports in the community so that they can receive help when they need, though. So when I asked her, of course, what the most challenging aspect of the position of library assistant was, she brought up COVID, and I think that that's probably going to be everyone's answer because it's quite challenging. So she stated it was incredibly impactful in the day-to-day operations of the library because when COVID first hit in March, the library shut down completely. And the Millwoods branch that she was working at when it was reopening, normally it's one of the busiest branches of Edmonton Public Library. It only brought back 3 workers, and Megan only came back to full-time work in July. Full staffing didn't occur until October. So to make up for this, they did curbside services. EPLTU, for example, is when a patron is unable to visit a location for over 3 months, the library will come to individuals with disabilities or those that are homebound or older adults to provide services. And COVID, of course, still affects how things are run now. There's no longer any in-person programming running at her location, and there were talks of starting up in-person programming again, but then the COVID cases would spike, so the idea of in-person programming again would be taken down. They would consider doing it once more, COVID cases would spike, and then they would end the idea of in-person. And as it stands currently, she stated it's quite unpredictable to know what events you might be running or doing day to day. So the biggest challenge faced in this position, again, COVID-19. She says that it will create uncertainty in what your job will look like because things are changing so quickly. You always have to account for that and adapt as necessary. So adapting to how your job would look, when people are coming back, how many people are coming back. It pushed Megan to be flexible in terms of what her skills were going to be. So she gave the example of technology changing so quickly that you have to keep pace with those changes and understand your relevance to your tasks at hand. As well, the expectations from the customer changes very quickly, and she states that the collections always change quite often. She provided the example of what were known as learning cases when she first began working, in which children were provided with briefcases that had books, tapes, and VHS materials, and now all of this is accessible online, so you have to familiarize yourself with modern learning materials and how to access them with technology so that you can best understand what current materials are available to your patrons and how you would provide access. She stated an example of working at Millwoods. Many patrons didn't have proper access to technologies for printing or faxing, so you as the worker had to instruct patrons on how to use these unfamiliar technologies when they came, and other branches saw patrons who had no access to computers at all at home. So you as the worker would provide very basic training on how to run and operate computers-based functions. She stated that at her current place of employment in the Stanley A. Milner Library, computers are in such a high demand that they have to limit patron use to 1 hour a day and struggle to get an extension because the computer time slot might be fully booked. So you as the worker have to try your best to teach a patron or aid them in the task at hand in under an hour, and this can sometimes be proven difficult. And sometimes it's not even education needed in using a computer's base functions, but more so if a patron is looking for a job, showing them which websites are reputable or how to compile a respectable resume. So she stated that the most important skill is to know when to leave your job at your job. So she stated that this is really important because there are days when you have very challenging customers and they might happen to pop in as soon as you start the day. So you have to be able to leave the stresses of that job there when you walk out the door. Otherwise, you will sit there and you will dwell on the things that occurred, and you just need to leave it. There are times when it can really wear on you. She stated that for her, she knows of other colleagues that have been in the same location for 20 years and they do the same career, and that's what they're comfortable with. For herself, though, she's been at 4 different branches in 3 different positions, and it's just something that worked better for her within the public library system because she needs that diversity. So she's able to move around a lot more, and you can change up what your expectations are so it doesn't become monotonous and tiring. You can explore different job opportunities, for example, like student page supervisor, being in charge of the EPL-TU delivery service, put on many different hats and get a different feel for what job might work for you or what might not. So by the end of this whole interview process, looking at this project, I really resonated with the point that she made that you can move around to different branches or roles within your career so that you aren't stuck in one position. I thought it was quite interesting to hear that you can try on these different roles to gain more experience and education on what it takes and means to work in a library environment. And it's quite an exciting prospect as it allows me to better understand how to serve my community with the hope that workers and patrons can grow and learn from one another.